very important part of the game. And frequently when we play endgames, when we get to the end game, the game is practically decided. Well, sometimes you have easily won endgame, sometimes you have totally drawn or lost end, but some positions are, a big majority of the end games are very playable, and a lot of things you have to know about these end games. Well, besides basics of end games, ones that I explained on my instructional endgame videos and DVDs. So there are some endgames that require, there is a lot of combinations and tactics in them. And a lot of people fail to recognize it because it's an endgame, it's an easy part of the game, not too many pieces, not too many combinations can be there, but it's wrong. Here in the endgames are some types, some themes of combinations which you cannot find in middle games, such as creating mating net with like only a couple of pieces, or with your pawns, or creating some still mating positions. We're going to see it later on this DVD what I mean, but you have to be aware that endgame does not necessarily mean you entering quiet phase of the game. Well, here is one endgame. It's a rook ending. Seems like very quiet position, and in this position it's black's move. Well, obviously move like e5 will not do anything, only improves white's king position. And black played king h7. It's a very strong move, very powerful move, and white did not recognize what is the threat. Maybe white thought that black wants to do king h6 followed by e5 mate, but that's not something can happen on a high level games. So white played rook to c7, failing to recognize any danger. And after rook to c7, it's interesting that white is totally lost. And here why this kind of combinations you can only see in the end game, because you are not going to see king on f4 in a middle game too often. And after g5 check, white is hopelessly lost. Obviously white must take the g5 pawn, but there are two ways to take with a pawn or to take with a king. Taking with a pawn is not good, because after king g6 there is a forced mate. Forced mate because of e5 checkmate, and if white goes g4 then h4, and e5 mating threat is unstoppable. What did white think after rook c7? They thought if black plays king h6 they can always go g4 and there will be no checkmate. White escapes on g3 king, and meanwhile f7 pawn is under attack. So after g5 check, h takes g, as we just now explained, is not good, because king g6 and white gets mated. And after king takes g5, you see the bad position of white b5 rook. So black goes rook e5 check. White has only move, there are no choices. Rook f5 check, another only move, and now black gives check and wins white's b5 rook. And with an extra rook, it's an easy win for black. Black wins easily. It's interesting how quickly from very quiet positions, we got total disaster. White got total disaster. Rook c7 and g5 check. This is not instructional from how to play endgame. Absolutely not. This will show you how you have to be aware of some highly unusual dangers in any kind of endgame. So we're going to see several more examples like this. So tactics are very, very important in the endgame in a lot of cases. Well, let me show you one interesting position between two strong players, two grandmasters actually, and white has white was a piece down, and looks like white has some drawing chances. Here is the position, and it was played between Vladimir Akopian and white against the Chinese grandmaster here. White just played b4. Even though white is a piece down, here is what white anticipates. If black takes on f5, then after king g6, black has bishop and rook hanging. It doesn't look like this is any good for white. But if for black, but if black takes, white takes back, and if black goes bishop f2, white exchanges the pawn, another pawn, and now white really has drawing chances, because what black has only one pawn on h6, and it's very difficult to win. It's impossible to win, especially if rooks will be exchanged, because you see this is theoretical drawn position even if white loses both pawns, because of h1 square is white square and bishop on e3 is dark square. So this cannot be done. So here comes absolutely amazing combination by the black, and we will see it right now. Here, against all odds, black plays rook takes f5 check, white goes king g4, now black goes rook g5 check, white plays king takes h6 as expected, and now beautiful bishop e3 move. You see black now is threatening rook takes b5 with a discover check, and all the white's moves are absolutely forced from now on. Rook takes g5 and b5. Now it's breakthrough, and black is making a pawn which is fast. Now, is this typical for the endgames? No. This is strictly tactics, very powerful tactics, and at this point it's very decisive. So after b5, well, actually there is a pawn also on h3. After b5, their only move is h4 by white to show some little resistance. Black plays b takes a, king h7. Now white is ready to move the rook, so black must take on g5, pawn takes g5, And interestingly, white manages to make a queen. a3, g6, a2, g7, a1 queen, g8 queen, queen h1 check. And here we will see the power of the combination. This is the key point. King g7, queen g1 check, king h7, queen takes g8, king takes g8, and a4 second time. And now you can see that white is hopelessly lost, because black just simply makes the queen. Now, endgame positions, interesting and exciting tactics you can see in some studies. Well, in some studies you will see positions that have nothing to do with the real chess game, but in some of them they are very, very instructive, and you will see with a very unusual idea in very normal practical positions. Here is one practical position, very practical position, but it's an endgame. White has an exchange, and but normally it's not enough to win, because white has no pawns, absolutely no pawns. But rook a2 is the move. This makes highly unusual ending. Bishop g1, because bishop is hanging and protecting with knight f1 is not gonna work, because after king e1 black loses another piece. Bishop g1, rook g2, and king f3. Actually, I looked at this endgame on one of the DVDs, by the way, but here I wanna show you how tactical this can be. Now we have like couple of pieces on board, and it's extremely tactical and a lot of combinations only with minor pieces. But the beauty of tactics in the end game, that kings participate in combinations as well, not like in the middle games. In the middle games, king is a target only, but in the end games, king may be a target, may be also active participant. Rook takes g1, and now white has perfectly sufficient material advantage, but after king f2, rook e1, and e4, white has very badly placed rook that has no move. Actually, black is threatening to go e3, followed by e2 check and knight e4, winning white's rook. What can black do? Obviously, king d2 is not good because of e3 check, and if rook takes e3, knight f1 check. So what can white do after e4? Knight e6, e3, and here black is ready to execute their threat, which is e2 check. And here normally you may start thinking, how should I stop black's pawn? By playing knight d4 or by playing knight f4? And that the reason why we call this a lot of tactics, because we're gonna get now position that is one of the most unusual positions maybe in chess you can ever see. Knight d4 as well as knight f4 leads to a draw, because after e2 check, you see if white goes king d2 and knight e4 check, white loses the rook, and if knight takes on e2, then we gonna get absolutely incredible position. where black wants to go knight e3 check, knight c4 check, and give perpetual check. And white has no defense since king cannot leave white rook. So in this position, after e2 check, this is already a draw. Knight takes e2, knight f1. So how can white win in this position? Here comes not knight d4 and not knight f4, but incredible knight c5 move. Now this is the kind of tactic that you may never see in your practical tournament game, but it may happen. It may happen. Now when black goes e2 check, white goes king d2, and black cannot do knight e4 check because white knight is gonna take it. So black has to go knight f1 check. Looks like they accomplished, they win white's rook. But then white goes king to c1, and you see that the rook is untouchable because of knight d3 checkmate. That gives us amazing position where black has to search for alternate decision, and black goes knight h2, but then white goes knight d3, and after king d2, after knight h2, knight d3 check, king e3, king c2, and knight f3. And white is put in the last test. Normally you have to move rook somewhere, and that's it. But somewhere is not good enough. You have to go rook to b1. That's the only move that will allow you to win. That's how many concrete dangers you have to pass. So to stay away from rook b1, because if rook goes to h1, this is still a draw. Knight d4 check, and knight is in danger. King c3, knight b5 check, king c4, knight d6 check, and on king c3, knight b5 check. You see, white cannot abandon this knight, because if king goes to b4, after king takes d3, king takes b5, and king d2, it's an easy draw. So in this position, white cannot win anymore. So that's why we don't go to rook h1, we go rook to b1, and after knight d4 check, when white plays king c3, there is no knight b5 check, and white puts the knight on e1 and slowly wins the pawn on e2 and wins the game. So this is very, very interesting. So let me show you how can some mistakes be made in very, very simple position. Here is the position. White is a pawn down and is trying to make a draw. White goes king d6, and this position is lost for white because black should have played e3, and if white takes, black takes, and eventually after king e5, king c3, king f4, king d2, king f3, f4, white loses e2 pawn and loses the game. This is straightforward and very clear and very clean. Well, but what happened after king d6? Black said, oh, let me go king c3 first, And next move I go e3. And it seems like it's perfectly logical. Well, but it's not. In this position after king d6, e3 is the only way for black to win, because the way they played king c3, it's a draw. Because now white goes king e5 and game ends in a draw, because king d2 is not good because of king takes f4, and you see that all pawns will be exterminated, so it's going to be a draw. And if black tries to go e3 now, that's not the same. If white takes on e3, white loses, because that's going to be the same position. But white makes a draw here, extremely unusual and incredible tactics, again, which you can never ever see in the middle game. King takes f4. It's a draw because pawn takes f2, and now king to e3. And you see the unusual still mating pattern, which you can never see in the middle game. Well, maybe if black tries to make a knight, that after king f4 is a draw, and the same thing happens if black makes a bishop, then king f4, and after bishop h3, e4, exchanging the last pawn and getting to a totally drawn position. So here is the conclusion. Very quiet positions. Once you go king d6, you see e3 move, it's winning, and you see king c3, seemingly the same thing, but does not win. Very interesting point here. Now let me show you one of my favorite endgame positions that I think is very, very instructive. So, but before I show you, I have to tell you, everybody knows, I'm sure you guys know here, that if white's move, white easily wins with a breakthrough that you all people probably learned in very early stage of the game. White goes g6, and if h takes g, then f6, making breakthrough and making queen. And it's a mirror image. If f takes g, then h6, and the same thing after g takes h, f6, and you see we're making queen, and that's it. That's elementary breakthrough that we learn in very early stage of the game. But let me show you something that you probably have not seen. Well, most of you have not seen. Here is the position. It's white's move. It looks like total draw, and what white should do, should go king c3, and game will be drawn. But white played king b3, which is also a draw. Black went king c7, and after king b4, black could have played king b6 and game will be drawn, but black went king b7. It's a trap. The white went king c5, and now white is lost. It's an interesting breakthrough. This is highly unusual and sophisticated breakthrough. This is kind of combination you will never see again in the middle game, because you cannot have this breakthrough when there are other pieces on the board that can stop the pawn. But here, after f4, black makes a queen by force. Now, why white waited for king to go to c5? Notice that with king on b4 there is no breakthrough, because here is the breakthrough with king on c5. And now we're going to compare with king on b4. On king c5 we have f4. Now if g takes f, then h4 makes a queen. h4. But after f4, then maybe e takes f. But then we go h4. Now we want to go h3. G takes h. Now we go g3. F takes g. And now we go e3 and we make a queen. Now imagine king on b4. If king was on b4, now white would play king c3 and win easily. So here black is winning. So after f4, there is no other way to stop the breakthrough. The main threat is f3. And after, or for example, if king takes d5, we already saw what happens if g pawn takes, and we saw what happens if e pawn takes, also h4, gh and g3. Now let's see what happens if white does not take, but take on d5. Now it's interesting way to play. f3. Taking on f3 is forced, and now only move that wins is h4, because we want to go h3. And after g takes h, you give the fourth pawn away, g3, and you make a queen. F takes g, e takes f, black makes a queen and wins all white pawns. That position is easily winning. Now this is one of the hardest breakthroughs you can ever see, and it looks like when in this position black's supposed to go king b6, but if they do something like king b7 or king c7, you have to be alerted. Why will he let me go king c5? And king c5 was played in the game, and after f4 black is easily winning. I think this is a very exciting combination with the minimal pieces on the board and with a very interesting combination. Now, in the endgame, when we play in the endgame, now one of the most important parts of the endgame are the pass pawns. Pass pawns can be weak pawns and can be very, very dangerous pawns, very dangerous threats.
Grandmaster Damian Lemos here for onlinechesslessons.net. First of all, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you would like to receive more free chess videos from us, you can just click the subscribe button below. I would also highly recommend signing up for my free mail course, the 10 Grandmaster Secrets to Dominate Chess. During this exclusive course from onlinechesslessons.net, I'll share with you my own Grandmaster shortcuts to effective attacking, defending, and growth hacks to improving your chess without complicated books or memorization. So sign up by clicking the sidebar on the right, and I know you won't be disappointed. Once more, this is Damien for onlinechesslessons.net, and I'll see you in my videos. Thank you.